How often does Chopin use the word legato in his scores? If you said very rarely, you'd be right. In all of the nocturnes in particular, Chopin marks legato only a handful of times over 100 plus pages of notated music. You'll find markings like sotto voce, even sostenuto, he'll use more often than the term legato. And how often does legato appear in Chopin's work under the staff? Well, that's, of course, even less often. In all of the nocturnes, legato appears under the staff only twice. Once in bar 1 of Opus 15, number 1, and once in bar 1 of Opus 27, number 1. And how often does legato appear next to a pedal marking? I'm only aware of one instance, and that is this piece, Opus 27, number 1. No matter what score you pull at, both of these markings are authentic. Legato is an authentic mark from Chopin, and the pedal marks are an authentic mark from Chopin. They're not an editorial addition. In any score you look at, legato is either above the pedal mark, below the pedal mark, and sometimes right next to the pedal mark. Is Chopin saying, play the left-hand legato? Is he saying something about pedaling legato? Is he saying something else? Understanding what this one word at the very beginning of the score means plays a huge role in how we execute the notes in the A section of this nocturne. Let's dive into how Chopin scholar Jan Ekier, what he has to say about this. He says, legato is intended not just horizontally, but also vertically, in the sense of harmonic legato, which avoids unclarity of the bass note before the change of pedal. And he gives us a nice graphic to go with this. Let's unpack a little bit of what he's talking about. Legato is intended not just horizontally. Well, we know that legato exists over time. If we just play a simple scale and we play it legato, those are smoothly connected across time. Even if we play with legato pedal we know of course means that when we change harmony, the pedal lifts not prior, but at the point of the change of harmony. The pedal lifts when the fingers go down. That's legato pedal in the traditional sense, right? Well, Chopin would have assumed that players of his music would know this, otherwise we would see legato written everywhere, right? Composers put marks on a page when they mean something different or extra, something that's not typically inferred when you play a piece of music. And the nocturnes are, of course, they are beautifully sung pieces of music. They feature usually lots of left-hand arpeggiation, all which is captured in the pedal, all which needs to be played very smoothly. So Chopin doesn't intend just horizontal legato, but also vertical legato in the sense of harmonic legato. So when we rearrange or when we rethink about music, reconceptualize it, instead of being a string of notes that happen over time, when we see music as the harmonies that happen, harmony here, harmony here, harmony here, and we condense all those notes into stacks of information that happen over time, right? These stacks of notes, these stacks of harmonies, those need to be connected. That's one of the really important things that Chopin's telling us with this mark. The stack of harmony, how the harmony all adds up and resonates, that is what needs to be legato. Does that happen with the fingers or the pedal? We're going to get into that in just a second. Jan Ekier goes on to say, which avoids unclarity of the bass note before the change of pedal. Unclarity in this sense does not mean avoiding blur. This is about avoiding pronouncing the wrong pitch as the lowest resonating pitch. Pronouncing the wrong pitch as the indicator of, let's say, inversion. Now, if we look at the piece of music, we see that we begin where the first change in harmony happens, bar 3. If we would pedal in a traditional sense of legato pedal, we would change pedal on the beat, right? And look what happens. The lowest note that sounds for nearly the entire duration of each half bar or each group of 6, the one note that is sounding that's giving us the impression that it's the lowest pitch is the first note of the grouping. In this case, G, G, and then it changes to A, right? Okay? That note is the note that the pedal is holding and extending across the remainder of the beat, or the two beats, right? That is not what Chopin intends. That's not what Chopin intends. Let's go back and look at the graphic that Jan Ekier gives us. He shows us that in each bar, Chopin intends the C sharp to be the lowest pitch that continues to resonate throughout everything. How does Jan Ekier know this? Let's take a look simply at bar 1. Bar 1, we have two groups of notes in the left hand. Let's put them in different colors, actually. Okay? We have the first half bar, the first sextuplet, which is one pattern of notes, and then we have the second group. Right? If we look further, it's that second group that continues and continues. It is not the first group that continues. Why did Chopin change the first? Why did he change the opening? Why is the opening different? Why didn't he write the same pattern starting on bar 1, beat 1? It goes right along with why he gave us this word legato. And that's because he intends us to hear this opening C sharp as the primary tone that needs to be sustained. He's giving it to us on beat 1 of bar 1, and then he's changing the pattern. And notice, in his own mark of pedal, we pedal all of that, right? We pedal all of it. Between those two things, legato, well, we'll call it three things. The legato mark, starting with a different pattern than what Chopin uses from here on throughout most of the rest of the A section. Most of the rest of the section, the lowest pitch is obscured or it's shifted off a beat. So he starts with it on the beat for a particular reason. And then he tells us, put the pedal down and let all of this resonate together. And he's hoping that by the time we play the first 2.5 bars in their entirety, we are going to have heard and our ears have gotten used to hearing this C sharp as the fundamental, the pedal tone, the tone that continues to ground everything. Now, what happens if we change this in bar 3 and we immediate play and then we pedal? All of a sudden, if we pedal in that way, all of these C sharps that come later, that are offset here and here and here, we can keep going, right? They all become little just blips in the harmony. They're no longer something that's sustained through. And this is how Jan Ekier knows, when we go back to what he has to say, that we are supposed to actually finger pedal the low C sharp across from where it's played, across the beat change or across the pedal change, across the bar line, so that no matter what happens, we maintain this pitch as the lowest resonating tone. So when we pedal, we hold C sharp with 5. And that is how we continue to play bar 3, bar 4, here's bar 5. They all are played over this resonating C sharp pedal tone. And then, here we're in bar 6, when this changes and when we do get a bass note that's pronounced on the beat, happens a few times here, we can of course go back to normal. We don't have to finger pedal or extend anything differently than normal, right? This goes back and straight into something we talked about in the fingering module of this course, because this is part of the reason why I don't always choose to play 5 3. If, especially when, the left hand has to reach for a 6th, like this, stretching from 5 to 3, and holding 5 as long as we need to, having the flexibility to hold that as long as we need to, puts the hand in quite an uncomfortable place. It's possible, but I find that it makes playing the rest of the notes as softly and intimately as they need to be in the rest of the arpeggiation much more difficult, which is why some of these times I change to using thumb or to using 2. That's a much more relaxed hand position, and I can easily hold 5 where it needs to be. I can tie it. Let's go back, and just in our score here, let's mark all of these C sharps here in the first line. Well, we're pedaling that, but as soon as we reach bar 3, that C sharp needs to be tied. This C sharp needs to be tied, right? They're not written, they're not notated like that, but we need to continue to hold them. And then it changes in 6. And then, whoa, here in measure 7, we have it on the beat, which is very nice. And then immediately following, we have to continue tying this with fingers so that we can continue to hear, right? Maybe through here, this is all pedaled, so we don't need to do as much work. But we need to continue to hear this C sharp, right? There's one more thing that we have to dive into about this before we call it a day with this marking and with the graphic, especially that Jan Ekier gives us. In the graphical representation, he has shown us to lift the pedal on the last of the sextuplet group, on the C sharp, and then depress the pedal again on the beginning of the next group of 6. And so we get something like this. Lift, lift, lift. Now, with the left hand by itself, that sounds fine. It sounds very clean. Listen to what happens, though, if we employ that sort of pedaling with the right hand, with the melody playing. So here's the beginning of that. If you listen closely, what's happening is as we strike these notes with the pedal down and then we lift, the resonance and the dimension of the melodic pitches changes. And so we actually, if we pedal according to Ekier's graphic, we are actually going to be creating a somewhat non-legato line in the melody, which we cannot do. We cannot have this and then have it lose resonance, and then have the next melody note start. Hear that loss of resonance, and here again. And then if we continue to pedal this entire section that way, our melody is going to turn into one nice blooming note that sounds lovely that gets chopped off. Before every pedal change, it's going to get suffocated almost. It's going to go and every single one of those melody notes. Therefore, we cannot pedal the way Ekier tells us. We cannot lift the pedal on the last of the sextuplets. No. We have to be very, very careful about how we finger legato and finger pedal and how we use the pedal itself, because the pedaling still needs to be dictated by what's happening in the melody, by the melodic movement. If we pedal the melody correctly, it's going to be in the very traditional sense of legato pedaling. We pedal when the next note that's out of the harmony is struck. And then here. So that the note blooms with an open pedal, and then we don't chop it off at the end, we don't suffocate it. No. We let it ring all the way until the next pitch. So because of that, if we go back to the score, because of that, we're still going to be lifting the pedal, not here and not depressing there, not that stuff. We're going to be lifting the pedal here and here is where the lift is going to happen, right? We don't even need this one. It's all of the same harmony throughout. There's a new harmony. So all of those up arrows, that's where we're going to lift pedal. And the depression will follow soon after, right? In a nice, relaxed, very relaxed manner, so we're not hearing any of the mechanism working. Right? All throughout this time, fifth finger is staying engaged for as long as the pedal needs to remain up after the next note that has been dictated. Like, for example, right here, after this note has been played, and until the pedal is depressed again, fifth finger needs to remain engaged in the key so that we can continue to hear the C sharp. So it's a very intricate coordination, very intricate timing between when the left hand five, how long it needs to hold, where the pedal lifts, how fast the pedal comes down, and then how quickly, once the pedal is down and our ear has told us it's safe, how quickly can we get out of five and continue the arpeggiation on. If we don't have to hold five through all of this, playing these arpeggios is dramatically easier. If we do have to hold five, we have this bit of hesitation that we need to work around that actually makes it more difficult to navigate up and down the keyboard, right? But we must, for the sake of the music, we must play it that way. All of this is what Chopin intends with basically three markings right on beat one of bar one. The initial C sharp, legato, and pedal all together. I almost forgot to mention, if you'd like to hear a very, very musical, but dare I say incorrect approach to playing this page, listen to Rubenstein's 1965 recording of this Nocturne, because you will hear him play very lovely, but letting go of all of the C sharps. And he gives us the wrong bass note that's sustained throughout the entire bar. And it actually, I feel like it sounds quite strange because we get other bars in his performance where C sharp is sustained when there's no pedal change. And then all of a sudden it goes away for a couple bars. And then it'll come back later and we'll get 2 bars of C sharp sustain and then it'll go away again. It's not very consistent. So be sure and check that out. I will leave a link to that in the description below. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. And also, if you're interested, be sure and check out my full course on this piece, the masterclass that's over on Thinkific for Chopin's Opus 27 No. 1 in C sharp minor. The link to that is also below in the description, so be sure and go check that out. As always, I'm Szczepanek. Practice smarter, not harder, and I'll see you next time.